Good evening and welcome everyone to Amir Shakur Speaks with your host Amir Shakur. That'll be me. Hey, today we're opening up and we're talking about a community, national, local, all the way up to national level situation that really is weighing everyone down. Not even just from mental, but I mean just the standpoint of a lot of the shenanigans, like for lack of a better use of the word, or the circus atmosphere that we see coming from the administration of the president of the United States of America. And I just think that with a lot of the things that are going on around the country, from National Guard militarization and ICE in our cities to the recent weaponization of the courts from the Trump administration. It's just weighing. It's just a lot of people are not only leveled down, but they're tired of it. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about it today. And so with that being said, I'd like to welcome you to Amir Shakur Speaks with your host Amir Shakur. We want to bring you the best information in faith, politics, and news, all done from an urban inspirational perspective. Today, our show is sponsored by Black America World News, the Chicago Urban Daily, and the Amir Shakur Speaks Broadcast Network. So, let's get into the sweep without further delay. So, basically, today, as of the last few hours, I guess is breaking news. The information is changing rapidly as the event progresses, but the initial news reports may be unreliable. Up until this point, the last minute updates that we've heard is that the 67th Attorney General of New York, I should say, who assumed office in January 1st of 2019, Letitia James, has just been indicted by the Trump White House. The Trump DOJ out of Virginia, as a matter of fact. Interesting enough, Letitia James is an American lawyer, politician, and she's been serving since 2019, as we said. Having won 2018, she was succeeded by Barbara Underwood, who was a member of the Democratic Party, as well as James. James is the first African American and the first woman to be elected New York Attorney General, as a matter of fact. James served as a member of the New York City Council from 2004 to 2013. She represented the 35th District, which includes Brooklyn, the neighborhoods of Clinton Hill, Fort Greene, and parts of Crown Heights and Prospect Heights. Recently, suburbs of New York, more or less for those who don't know the area. James chaired the committees on economic development, sanitation, and served on several others from 2013 to 2018. She was the New York City public advocate, making that the first African American to be elected to hold citywide office in New York City. James filed a lawsuit. Okay, so this is the part which I think that we can kind of really start breaking this whole thing down. So James filed a lawsuit against Donald Trump in 2018, and that lawsuit was based upon several factors. According to the indictment, James was actually indicting the President of the United States for tax fraud, tax evasion, and she did a pretty good job on that. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well. So if you're just joining us, we're talking about the weaponization of the Trump White House against Letitia James and James Comey, and just pretty much the weaponization in general. So as of a few hours ago, the New York Attorney General Letitia James has been indicted by a federal grand jury in Virginia on charges of bank fraud, making false statements and related to a mortgage issue out of Virginia. The indictment, as we said, follows public pressure from President Donald Trump, a longtime political opponent, when James had successfully sued in a civil fraud case. The indictment details James was charged with bank fraud and making false statements to a financial institution. The indictment, I would say, rather weak, has very weak points, and alleges that she obtained a favorable loan term in Norfolk, Virginia, by a property, misrepresenting that it would be a secondary residence when it was intended to be a rental income. And James has made a response. We'll look at the response shortly, but she's called the accusations baseless, framing the indictment as a political retribution. And she also noted that Trump's public statements on the matter support her view that his not only goal is to weaponize the criminal justice system, but the timing. This is the second time in weeks that the Justice Department under Donald Trump or the Trump administration has secured charges against one of his political adversaries. The first one was James Comey, the former FBI director, and that happened 2 weeks ago. So the controversy of the matter, the prosecution has prompted concerns as a career federal prosecutor reportedly concluded that there is insufficient evidence to pursue charges against James. Without further ado, let's just look at a video to support this indictment against James. And I mean, I think that it's worth bearing that again, the charges seem very baseless at this point in saying that James secured favorable loan terms on a relative's mortgage loan. So it's definitely questionable, to say the least. Also, I do want to mention that the Letitia James saga is just an ongoing number of issues. Lindsay Halligan was appointed the New York Eastern District, Virginia prosecutor who took over the case, who was a personal attorney of Donald Trump and has very little experience in prosecuting high-level cases. So let's just look at that on video on YouTube, and we'll take it from there.
Actually, we just got the video in. Let me play it for you, Rev.
President's action. This is nothing more than a continuation of the president's desperate weaponization of our justice system. He is forcing federal law enforcement agencies to do his bidding, all because I did my job as the New York State Attorney General. These charges are baseless, and the president's own public statements make clear that his only goal is political retribution at any cost. The president's actions are a grave violation of our constitutional order and have drawn sharp criticism from members of both parties. His decision to fire a United States attorney who refused to bring charges against me and replace them with someone who is blindly loyal not to the law, but to the president, is antithetical to the bedrock principles of our country. This is the time for leaders on both sides of the aisle to speak out against this blatant perversion of our system of justice. I stand strongly behind my office's litigation against the Trump Organization. We conducted a 2-year investigation based on the facts and evidence, not politics. Judges have upheld the trial court's finding that Donald Trump, his company, and his 2 sons are liable for fraud. I'm a proud woman of faith, and I know that faith and fear cannot share the same space. And so today, I'm not fearful. I'm fearless. And as my faith teaches me, no weapon formed against me shall prosper. We will fight these baseless charges aggressively, and my office will continue to fiercely protect New Yorkers and their rights. And I will continue to do my job.
Wow. Rev, speaking to the moment with words crafted for the history of these times.
No question about it. And I think that if he were going to pick an enemy, he picked the wrong one, because the strength and as well as the eloquence of Tish James will now be on the national stage. Because one, I agree with some of the panelists that the case will probably be thrown out. If it is not, it is going to really expose the weaponization of this president against any of his political enemies or his perceived enemies. To have Lisa Cook in the Federal Reserve and Tish James accused almost of the same crime, and then he goes after Comey. And this is a man that just a year and a half, 2 years ago, was saying that he was the victim of politicization of the criminal justice system, and juries found him guilty. Let's not forget, when Tish James and the State Attorney General's office of New York prosecuted his companies and him and his university, they didn't find him guilty. The juries found him guilty. The prosecutor can't say you're guilty. They can say you are accused. We're indicting you. He was found guilty of sexual harassment by a jury. He was found 34 counts felonies, criminal, by a jury. So there's no one that can doubt that this is all vengeance, a misuse of the criminal justice system. And I think that what he's done is going to really backfire. I think I've been getting calls already. People are ready to rally around Tish James. They know Tish James. Tish James wouldn't cross on a red light. I mean, she's annoying. She's been had so much integrity. I grew up in Brooklyn knowing her. And I think that it is absolutely absurd. He has just started the re-election campaign for her, because people are going to rally around her that may have stayed out of it because it is blatant what he's doing. In the same week, you're going to arraign James Comey, and you're going to indict the state attorney general. And both of them were people that dealt on the
So with that in mind, let's just talk about this. And good evening, everyone. Good evening, Miss Levi. Hello, Ramona, and everyone who's joining. If you're joining just right now, we're talking about the indictment, the criminal indictment of Letitia James, a long-term political opponent of Donald Trump. And, what we're seeing here is, as of a few hours ago, the New York Attorney General Letitia James has been indicted by a federal grand jury in Virginia on charges of bank fraud. Let's go ahead and look at some of the issues of the indictment and what the charges are. I'm going to show another quick short video about it. Give me 1 second. Also, I think it's worth notating also before I have to sneeze again. I think it's worth notating that James Comey, also a Trump opponent, the former director of the FBI, was recently indicted. And so going back to Letitia James, she's charged with bank fraud, making false statements to a financial institution. The indictment alleges that she obtained favorable loan terms out of Norfolk, Virginia, on a property, misrepresenting that it would be a secondary residence, which was later corrected for the record, and it was intended to be a rental income. So not only was it not misrepresented, but it was corrected. James has called the allegations baseless, framing the indictment as a political retribution. She also noted that Trump's public statements on the matter support her view that it's not only a goal to weaponize the system, but it's the second time in weeks, as we said, that the Trump justice system has weaponized the justice system with the DOJ. So the question of the hour that we have to ask, and the question of the hour that should be asked, is, as folks have said, is the allegations against Letitia James and James Comey. I mean, where are they stemming from, and how much more do we have to see? We've heard that General Mark Milley, who was a longtime Trump opposer, will also be indicted in the next coming weeks. The weaponization people are saying is Pam Bundy. Pam is the attorney general of the United States of America, who heads the DOJ, and she's someone who's not only a ally, but I mean, the things that we're seeing that are coming out of the White House, we've never seen in United States history. So, again, if you're just joining, according to the indictment of Letitia James, the New York Attorney General, the prosecution has promoted concern that a career federal prosecutor reportedly is being indicted on mortgage fraud on a corrected loan application out of Norfolk, Virginia. There is insufficient evidence, according to legal specialists on the ground, to pursue charges against James. But as we very well know, Donald Trump called for the action against James. And a new attorney, initially an attorney from the Virginia district, stepped down because he said that, or he was pushed out because he said that there was non-sufficient evidence to prosecute James. But a new U.S. attorney, newly put in place by Donald Trump, who was his former personal attorney, was appointed the Eastern District of Virginia DA in our U.S. attorney, and took control of the case. According to the indictment out of the Eastern District of Virginia, the evidence supporting the charges against New York Attorney General Letitia James is based upon her alleged misrepresentation on a mortgage loan application from 2020 or 2020, to say the least. I definitely want to drill this indictment down a little bit more. Let's look at some more supporting evidence on the Letitia James case. And, I think it's worth noting that, we all feel the level of political theater that's coming out of the Trump White House is extremely high at this point. So let's go ahead and follow another video.
All right, we've got some breaking news that we want to get to. This is out of Virginia. Possible criminal charges being weighed right now against New York Attorney General Letitia James. Joining us now, MSNBC senior investigative correspondent Carol Leonnig. Carol, this is your reporting. Walk us through what you know, how you know it.
This bouncing ball has been bouncing so fast and furiously in the last few hours that forgive me if I'm a little breathless, Katie. We are hearing from multiple sources now, my colleague Ken Delanian and I, that Lindsay Halligan is pushing forward to seek a grand jury to indict Letitia James, the New York Attorney General, who is on Donald Trump's enemies list, quote unquote. We are told that presentations were made to a grand jury today. And as nerdy court watchers like me know, and you do too, Katie, the grand jury's decision is expected within the hour or within less than 2 hours at least. They usually come back in the afternoon with their choices and decisions. So what we're reporting again, and what's the most important thing for people to know, is that the U.S. attorney that Donald Trump appointed just weeks ago has presented and provided evidence to a grand jury today on charges related to mortgage fraud against and allegations against Letitia James.
Carol, why is it being filed in the Eastern District of Virginia? She's the New York Attorney General.
Yeah, these allegations circle around a home that Letitia James niece purchased and refinanced, and Letitia James was helping her with that financing. And in a box on a power of attorney form that we all probably have to turn in from time to time when buying a home, it remarked that this was a primary residence. In other documentation, Letitia James made clear that this was not her residence, not her primary residence, and literally wrote in an email to her bank and her broker, "This is not my primary residence." So the claim here has got serious issues, but Donald Trump has been pressing and pressuring this Eastern District of Virginia office to indict and prosecute Letitia James over this home, which is located in Norfolk, Virginia.
Okay, Lisa, the fraud at issue, that she said it was her primary residence or checked a box on a piece of documentation, but then also was pretty explicit in other documentation and in an email, as Carol just mentioned, that it was not her primary residence. Does that make up for checking the box?
One would think that the later paperwork would negate any inference of intent to deceive, which is critical to any fraud allegation that you could bring under federal law. I also want to say, Katie, that the manner of the document that Carol is talking about, this power of attorney document, what probably happened here, and I have to refresh my recollection by looking at the paperwork, is power of attorney is something that you sign when you can't physically be present at, for example, the closing of a real estate transaction, that you give somebody else your power of attorney to sign for you. In all likelihood, this form was not prepared by Letitia James, but rather by somebody affiliated with her niece who is helping her with the financing of the home. Letitia James then checking off the box in this power of attorney, but later making it clear this is not her primary residence. The reason, though, that this is what some people would consider fraud on the bank or the lender is because if you consider something your primary residence, you qualify usually for more favorable loan terms. It can also be the basis for an exemption under tax law. And certain states, if you say you're buying your first residence for the first time in that state, those are state-based tax exemptions as well.
I'm going to put up Donald Trump's Truth Social, where he's telling Pam Bondi that certain people should be charged. Letitia James is one of them. He says they're all guilty as hell, but nothing is going to be done. Then he mentions Lindsay Halligan, who after this was appointed to the district. She is a really good lawyer, he says, and likes you a lot. We can't delay any longer, you being Pam Bondi. So does she have the same...
So let's go back and we'll stop. We'll pause right there and we will look at this situation for what it is. I think that it bears a lot of statement that Donald Trump has intensely weaponized the Department of Justice against his opponents. His statement here says it all. And if we definitely want to drill the statement down a little bit closer, I would definitely say that where does this end? You know, we are getting weighed as a country down with just a lot of issues coming from this White House, just from terrorists to the National Guard and ICE and communities, and now this statement from Donald Trump to Pam Bondi that was done on, I believe, Truth Social, says, I have read over 30 statements and posts saying that essentially the same old story as last time, all talk, no action, noting nothing is done. What about Comey, Adam Shifty Schiff, and Letitia? They're all guilty as hell, but nothing is going to be done. So this is Donald Trump actually prompting for the prosecution of any of his political opponents. I mean, and for me, again, this statement says it all. They're all guilty as hell, but nothing's going to be done. Then we almost put a Democrat-supported U.S. attorney in Virginia with a really bad Republican past, a woke rhino. And for those who don't know what woke is the jargon that the Republican right and the neocons use to talk about any issues that affect the African American vernacular in communities of color. And the whole theme from their aspect of it is to be anti-woke. according to the statement of woke Rhino, who is never going to do his job. That's why two of the worst Democratic senators pushed him so hard. What do you guys think? I mean, I think that with a lot of the issues that are going on in the country right now that we're seeing, I mean, this it sends not only a bad message, but it weighs us down. You know, and I want you guys to share your thoughts and really drill this thing down. So, hello, Brian. So this is not going to stand up in court, and thank you for commenting. And yes, I agree. I do not believe that it's going to stand up in court. There's no way that a corrected loan application for a mortgage loan, and again, it was corrected, so it's definitely not going to stand up in court. Thank you for your comment. Ramona, I'm glad Ms. James is speaking up and out in her defense. Yes, I mean, you know, will play her comment again, but she's definitely not backing down. She's not cowering down, and she's going to, you know, she's a seasoned prosecutor, and she's going to stand up in her own defense. Not only is she going to stand up in her own defense, but she has a team of lawyers around who are excellently skilled. And remember, they actually took the president and former president of the United States, and they took him out. So, you know, I expect the same thing. For the defense exhibit A. Yes. Let's see. Comments. And here's the thing. I think that, to be honest, I think it is all political. You know, as Miss Grace Levi says, and welcome, Miss Levi, and thank you for joining. And your comments are very, very much necessary. So, you know, share your thoughts. I think that this is a political weaponization. A lot of us do of the Department of Justice, and it's a bad precedent to set. So here is our illustrious Pam Bundy. She's the Attorney General, and she was confirmed in February 2025. I mean, it's only been just 9 months into this presidency, not even a year. And I mean, we're very much weighted down, and I mean, shameful to see this Trump administration and the criticism regarding weaponization of the Justice Department that has emerged from both sides of the aisle, with Trump and Bundy leveling accusations against previous administration and mostly Democrats, I should know, accusing the new administration of engaging in the same behavior. Accusations of weaponization against the Biden administration and current Democrat pundits or political opposition of Donald Trump. Pam Bundy, during her confirmation hearings, she promised to end the weaponization of the Justice Department, accusing the previous administration of using law enforcement against Trump and his allies, which is, it's suspect. These similar accusations in writing on Truth Social in November of 2024, and that the DOJ had been weaponized against Donald Trump, according to the quote from Truth Social. Bundy and other Justice Department officials have argued that the two federal cases filed against Donald Trump under the Biden administration were an example of weaponization, to say the least. So I guess this is a case of, you know, do what we do, not what we say. I want to know what your thoughts are, you know, and I definitely am glad that if this happened to happen to anybody, I think Pam Bundy chose and Donald Trump chose the wrong person. Letitia James is a seasoned prosecutor, and out of her defense, the road is laden with enemies of Letitia James, who she is prosecuted. So I think that, you know, the situation is showing a hard left and hard right contrast of where our community is going, where our country is going. You know, we see weaponization of the Justice Department. We see the heavy mechanization and militarization of our cities. It's just it's showing in bad faith what this administration is all about. And yes, I do agree that Pam Bundy is not acting like the Attorney General of the United States, but she's acting like Trump's personal attorney. So to your point, I think it's very well noted. And it's something that we'll see. I mean, this is breaking news, Brian, and everyone else. And, we'll definitely see. As far as the racism aspect of it, I think that it needs to be shown. But I mean, this administration has proven a lot of things in that it is not above racism, and on many, many levels, not just on the level of weaponization, but a lot of the policies that are coming out of the Trump White House, the recent firing of federal employees, the anti-woke policies, the anti-DEI policies. These things are weighing heavily on the heart, souls, and minds of American citizens. So we have to look at these things for what it is. I want to show a video with the exact same thing that's happening to Mr. James Comey, and let's just look a little bit about the Comey incident. And for those who don't know, James Comey was the former FBI director who basically Trump saw as an enemy because he released the files on Russia, the Russiagate files. Let's look a little bit about that, and let's look at the illustration in the video on it.
In court, former FBI Director James Comey arraigned in federal court, pleading not guilty. Comey, a frequent target of President Trump, and tonight what ABC News is now learning about a central witness in this case. Comey's team now trying to get this trial dismissed before it even starts. Here's our Chief Justice correspondent, Pierre Thomas. He was in the courtroom today.
Tonight, James Comey, former director of the FBI, now a criminal defendant in a Virginia courtroom, pleading not guilty to federal charges brought at the urging of President Trump. Comey has publicly proclaimed his innocence.
I have great confidence in the federal judicial system, and I'm innocent. So let's have a trial.
Today in court, Comey's attorney telling the judge he will quickly file a motion to end the case before it begins, seeking a dismissal on the grounds of selective and vindictive prosecution, saying this case is being brought at the direction of President Trump. Comey was indicted just 5 days after President Trump publicly pressured Attorney General Pam Bondi to go after him, posting, "Nothing is being done, and we can't delay any longer." 24 hours ago, Bondi was asked about that message.
Do you consider that a directive to the Justice Department?
Senator Klobuchar, President Trump is the most transparent president in American history, and I don't think he said anything that he hasn't said for years.
The former FBI chief now charged with lying to Congress and obstructing a congressional proceeding by testifying he did not authorize leaks to reporters. Sources tell us the Justice Department will allege Comey had in fact allowed a friend, law professor Daniel Richmond, to leak information. This, although sources say prosecutors had previously determined Richmond would be a problematic witness who would present likely insurmountable problems for their case. That's because Richmond told them Comey had actually urged him not to engage with the media and not to share information, according to sources. Still, President Trump insisted the case go forward anyway. He removed the U.S. attorney in charge, replacing him with one of Trump's own personal attorneys, Lindsay Halligan, who has no prosecutorial experience, saying Halligan would get things moving. Comey's attorney told the judge today he will argue that U.S. Attorney Halligan was illegally appointed and that this is also grounds for dismissing the case. Again, sources telling us a key witness could be problematic. If the case does go to trial, the judge scheduled it to start soon on January 5th. David?
And you'll be following it, Pierre Thomas in.
So for those who are just joining us, we are right now in the crux of a political climate that not only seems heavy-handed, it seems biased to every degree. And there's something to suggest that our country is in a great struggle. We are in for a struggle. Our topic of the hour is Letitia James, the New York Attorney General, who's been indicted by a federal grand jury in Virginia on charges of bank fraud, and making false statements related to a mortgage. The indictment follows public pressure from President Donald Trump, a longtime political opponent whom James had successfully sued before the election 2 years ago in a civil fraud case. So James was charged with bank fraud, making false statements to a financial institution. The indictment alleges that she obtained favorable loan terms in Norfolk, Virginia on a property by misrepresenting that it was intended for rental income. Even though the mistake, not intent, was corrected, James' lawyer, Abby Lowell, previously stated that regarding a similar mortgage allegation, that any inaccuracies on the loan paperwork were mistakes and not an attempt to deceive the lender. There was no financial gain. There was no favorable terms, no favorable profits. It was just a notation that was corrected. And the recent indictment, however, focuses on the 2020 purchase. And James' legal team has not yet addressed this specific loan to the level that we've seen as far as paperwork. But we all feel that, and the country feels, and watchers feel that it is political retribution. James and her legal team have called the charges baseless and argued that the prosecution is driven by President Donald Trump's desire for revenge after James brought a successful civil fraud case against him. So what do you guys think? What gives? Any other predictions about how this case will go against Comey or James? I think that what we're going to see is we're going to see further representation and weaponization by the Trump administration under Pam Bundy against other political foes. And I think that it's just going to start. This is the start. It's not the one-off. This is not a one-off situation or a two-off situation. This is going to continue on with other political opponents of Donald Trump, and we're going to see it. That's what the prediction is. Yeah, they're innocent and sue Trump when he leaves office. And yeah, I mean, definitely there will be, as we saw in the last case, there will be a line of cases, both civil and civil litigation, that will be waiting for Mr. Trump from not only the first time, but the second shot at it, which this latest presidency. We'll see it, and I don't think it's ever going to stop. I think he's going to be too above his head in civil litigation over the course of the next few years, months, and days. Even after leaving office, we'll see it. So, and we saw it the last time, I should say. So the charges follow a period of pressure from President Trump to prosecute James and other political opponents, as we've mentioned, and the timing is definitely suspect. And circumstances surrounding the indictment has raised concerns about the weaponization of the Justice Department for political purposes, given that the new U.S. attorney, unskilled, untested, unproven, Lindsay Halligan, took over the investigation and was placed in the office roughly a few weeks ago, less than 3 weeks ago, and secured the indictment after career prosecutors deemed the evidence insufficient. So we are definitely looking at a weaponization like none other of our criminal justice system. And I definitely want to say that for those who are watching, the specialists and the legal specialists on the ground, make no mistake that the intent is, I mean, the Trump administration has a really rough uphill battle, especially with Letitia James. You know, mistake is not intent, especially on a mortgage purchase, which she didn't profit from, she didn't gain from, you know, but political retribution is what they're saying that it is. And, you know, even in the case of James Comey, there is inconclusive evidence, which sources say that the prosecutors are finding not enough evidence to prove either James or Comey knowingly committed fraud and worked in any criminalistic way. But again, this is a Trump effort to use the Department of Justice and the courts for weaponization, for conviction. prosecutors must prove in both cases that James and Comey had criminal intent, and they have none of the above. In the context of the indictment in James's case, the charges follow a period of public pressure from President Trump, as we had just seen. Let's go back to that. If we can pull that up, that statement that Donald Trump put on Truth Social, I think it's warranted just to look at it again, just to kind of gauge it. And let's look at the statement. So this is the statement that Donald Trump made on Truth Social, nonetheless, saying that nothing's being done, and nothing is being done. What about Comey, Adam, Shifty Schiff, Letitia? They're all guilty as hell, but nothing's being done. So we are seeing the gradual weaponization of our criminal justice department. We're seeing the militarization of our cities. We are seeing every anti-American sentiment and every anti-American policy from this White House that, like the likes of which we haven't seen in years. You know, when a president uses the Department of Justice to knowingly weaponize against his political opponents, you know, this is a White House gone wild, to say the least. And again, for a conviction, prosecutors must prove that Letitia James had criminal intent. Even James Comey had criminal intent. And if the proof is not there, then they're not going to, these things are going to fall by the wayside. The FBI director, former FBI director, I should say, James Comey, does have one of the best prosecuting attorneys in the country who is working on his behalf. And the case is going to be problematic, and likely the DOJ will be prevented from establishing their case. The jury, as a matter of fact, is falling apart as we speak. Comey did plead not guilty yesterday and still was indicted on the charges of making false statements and obstruction to a 2020 related testimony before the Senate Judiciary Committee in 2020. But the Justice Department officials have privately expressed that the case could quickly unravel, and it is unraveling under the scrutiny of a federal judge and defense lawyers. Daniel Richmond, a law professor who prosecutors allege Comey authorized the leaked information to the press, told investigators that the former FBI director instructed him not to engage with the media on at least 2 occasions. Unequivocally, Comey said he never authorized him to provide any information to any reporters anonymously, and still ahead of a 2016 election. The odds of this prosecution moving forward are likely to again fall by the wayside. So we are definitely looking at a weaponization of the criminal justice department like we've never seen. And for those who are wondering what will the Trump administration do next, well, you know, we've heard that Adam Schiff and General Mark Milley are going to be next within weeks of this, and I don't believe that a lot of these high-level VIPs or luminaries will be prosecuted, starting with Letitia James. I believe that it will be pertinent for Donald Trump, Pam Bundy, and the DOJ under their direction. I think it would be pertinent for them to really find another course of action. So that's where it's at. I definitely want us to keep looking in on this. I think it's worth watching. Again, this is breaking news that Letitia James has just been prosecuted. The former the former New York Attorney General, and James is charged with bank fraud. James's response is that she's called the allegations based on framing from an indictment as political retribution. The timing is suspect, and the controversy and the concerns that are being raised, not just in Virginia or DC, but around the country by legal watchers and career federal prosecutors, as well as the courts, are saying that there's not sufficient evidence to pursue charges against James, or even Comey for that matter. And this is, the timing is political retribution for the Trump fraud case. In the civil case, James secured a judgment against Trump and his company for fraudulently inflating the value of his assets. Kind of similarly suited to what Letitia James is going through. It's mortgage related. Obviously, the value of assets. A New York appeals court later tossed out the substantial financial penalty against Trump, but upheld the finding of fraud, and James appealed the decision concerning the penalty. There has been political pressure by Trump demanding that the Department of Justice prosecute his political opponents, and we are seeing that. And I think that that's going to weigh heavily into the case. So again, we hope that these efforts are stopped. We are in a situation in our country to where we're seeing a lot of confusion, a cluster of confusion with militarization of National Guard and ICE in our cities, with tariffs that are affecting our stocks, and we just have to be patient and see how this thing weighs out and plays out. I want to thank everyone who's been following us. Please like the stream, share the information, and if you haven't subscribed to Amir Shakur Speaks, please go ahead and subscribe. I think that the last few comments, Trump thinks people are going to back down when he states his own claims are not founded true. Yeah, well, we know the acronym for taco. Trump always chickens out. And like you said, Brian Wade, thank you. It's not going to stand up in court. So that's where we're at, guys. If you have any further questions, please feel free to reach out to me. If you have any up and coming ideas for content, if you want to be a guest, please email me at amirshakurspeaks.com. Again, if you haven't liked and subscribed to the broadcast, please subscribe to the broadcast channel, Amir Shakur Speaks broadcast channel, and you could find me on Facebook. You could find me on LinkedIn, and the broadcast channel is on YouTube. And you'll find me in the mornings for our new segment, and that segment is Amir Shakur Speaks, the Urban Watch. So please feel free to watch that. And before I leave, I'm going to suggest to you the motivational. I think we need a little bit of motivation. So understanding that politics is a very mythical thing. Just because someone holds a position doesn't mean that they're a good person or a leader. It means that they have just made enough people believe in their agenda and side with them for whatever reasons. More importantly, we have to be careful about who we call leader. Use that word generously. We do not use that word in the right way, but we use it too generally. We have to be careful about who we call a leader. All right. So I want to thank you guys again for joining Amir Shakur Speaks, and I thank you guys for following me, like and follow and share. And I'll see you again over the course of the weekend for the Weekender, which will be tomorrow. And I appreciate you guys. So have a good one. Peace.